But obviously, it's going to impact investors differently. How do you see the impact of this on individual investors in real estate, both in the long as well as the short term?
See, the change which has been made, one has to understand what it actually means. Earlier, you had a higher rate, but a part of the gain was offset by the indexation cost, which was nothing but the fact that your cost went up based on the inflation that was present in the economy during the year. And this was reflected through the cost inflation index number, which was released every year by the Central Board of Direct Taxes. So you had a higher rate, but a part of the gain was offset by the indexation benefit. Now you have a lower rate. So 20 becomes 12.5, but you cannot raise your cost at all, which means that your actual cost, you just simply need to compare with the sale price, and the difference becomes the taxable capital gain. And you have to pay, if it's long-term in nature, if you held it for more than 24 months, then you simply go and pay 12.5% on it. Now, the impact will differ for each individual because it depends on when you have bought the property. Second, it also depends on what is the kind of appreciation that you had in the property. Because, for example, say somebody has bought a property just 3 years back, and now you have, say, a 20 or a 25% appreciation in 3 years. Earlier, assuming that even if inflation was rising or the index was rising by 5% a year, what you would have got is that 15% out of that 20 or 25% of the gain would have gone away indexation, and the tax would have been just on the remaining 5 or 10%. Now what will happen is that even in 3 years, if the property price has risen say 20%, the entire 20% would be taxed but at a lower rate. So the main point here is that each individual, you cannot generalize this because each individual, depending on their cost, depending on when they have bought the property and what is the appreciation that they have encountered. Because see, you can take an average figure of saying that, say, property prices have gone up, say, 8% in a city like Mumbai. But if you look at each individual area, you will find that there are vast differences within that. So each individual will need to do their own working for their property, depending on these factors. And then they will know that what is the actual impact on them and whether they are paying more under this new tax rates or whether it's actually lesser than earlier.
As you said, it will be different for different people. But if we were to break that down further for our viewers, what kind of an impact do you see on property owners who have a longer, holding period? For instance, it's above 10 years. What do you see for them? Do you think that they will be worse off selling away now?
So if you go back and the longer you have held, and the bigger is the actual gain which you have encountered in the property, the chances are that you will actually end up paying more under the new regime, specifically if your cost was very low. Because ultimately it all depends on the point of indexation. See, if your cost itself was extremely low, then you would, even with a large amount of indexation, you would not have benefited too much. So in that case, you are actually at the end of the day ensuring that because of the lower rate, you are benefiting from this. But if for a longer period of time, your cost itself was high and you are not getting too much of gains, then you might have actually ended up with a loss in the previous working, while now you might end up paying a tax. So that was one point which was very significant, because in many cases, individuals on their properties actually had a loss when it came to the tax calculation, even though in absolute terms they had gains earlier. So which will not be the case now.
Now, do you think that, the impact will be different in metros, say, a tier 1 city as compared to perhaps tier 3, tier 4 cities? Because the appreciation that we have seen in a Delhi, Mumbai or a Bangalore, has been much more. So perhaps that difference will also play out now?
It will definitely play out. the smaller the difference, or rather smaller the rise in the value of the prices of the property, you will find that there might not be a very big difference between the two calculations. But if the gains are pretty large, then there is more likely to be a chance where you see a difference between the old working and the new working. And which is why that areas which have witnessed rapid growth over a period of time, there the impact is likely to be present in terms of a difference. But overall, if you look at it mathematically, this 12.5% rate is such that in a lot of cases, the tax in the old and the new system will be around the same level, slightly higher, slightly lower. That is, if you have not witnessed sudden either a very huge rise or virtually no rise at all in the value.
Right. So obviously, metros perhaps will see a greater deal of difference. Now, there is a lot of confusion amongst people on what happens to property that has been bought before 2001. Say if you bought a property in 1990, how will this impact those people?
So if you look at the reading of what the change has been made, there is no clarity on it. But yesterday and today, you've seen government officials come out and clarify this thing. So if you look at what the earlier system was, the new indexation slab, or rather the new indexation base, was 1st April 2001, which means that from that year, they considered the base index to be 100, and then the index started rising. Actually, there was an earlier index also which went back to 1980, but that was then scrapped and the new one started in 2001. Now, the government officials have said that what will happen is that as on 1st April 2001, you can take the value of the property as on that date, which is higher than the cost which you would have had if you had bought it earlier. And then that value as on 1st April 2001 becomes your cost, which you have to compare with the sale price. So for example, assume that you bought a property for say 30 lakhs in 1990. Now, if you value that property and see what it would be as of 1st April 2001, and the value at that point was say 60 lakhs, then 60 lakhs you can take as your cost and then compare it to the sale price and pay tax on. So this is the clarification which they have given verbally. Now, how they actually put it in words and put it in the Income Tax Act, that is a secondary matter which will also need to be followed up.
Right now, the latest clarification from the Finance Ministry has pegged real estate returns at about 12 to 15%. Is that a realistic sort of a number, for people essentially to make their calculations?
No, I mean, as I said earlier, the average figure has no meaning at all. Because even within a city, you will find that different areas have different scope of appreciation. So even say in a tier 2 city, you will find that some areas which were say popular earlier, they are either stagnant or the rate of growth is 4 or 5%. But maybe areas on the outskirts where some industrial development is taking place, or maybe some metro connectivity is there, all those things, suddenly they spike in value. So you can get an average figure, but using that average is immaterial for an individual, because for you, you need to check what is the rise that your particular property has seen at the end of the day.
Also, one last question. What kind of an impact do you see on people who are actually selling their real estate to buy another property? And I'm talking about average people like you and me who want to, sell one property and perhaps be able to invest in something else which has come up in a city like Mumbai, say it's a newer building or something like that.
So for these people, I mean, I don't see there is a problem, because there is a section under the Income Tax Act wherein if you sell a property and then reinvest the gains into another property, that is not liable to tax. So those provisions remain as they are. This is only a case where if you decide to sell the property and not reinvest the proceeds elsewhere, or say not buy the 54 EC bonds which are available up to 50 lakhs in a year, if you don't do anything and you decide to pay the tax, then this is the tax rate you have to pay. But if you decide to reinvest the amount, then there is no question of any tax payment. So that is in a way immaterial. So for people who are shifting from one house to the other, selling one, buying the other one, they just need to take into consideration the fact that they meet the timelines in terms of when they are buying the new one and when they are selling the old one.
So all in all, Mr. Pandya, how do you read this scheme? Are you someone who believes that this is not going to cause much of a difference and it will actually help, sort of simplify the taxation?
So definitely it will help in simplifying the taxation, but it is not necessary that everyone will feel the same impact. So for some people, there could be a far higher amount of tax that they have to pay. Some people will also save taxes. But overall, if you are looking at the long term in terms of the Income Tax Act, where how you are trying to simplify it, then this is definitely a step in that particular direction. For people who have used the old method since the last 30, 40 years, this is definitely a big change because indexation is like a basic part of your entire capital gains calculation. So in that sense, it's a change. But at some point or the other, even if not now, maybe when the new tax code was to come in, this had to be simplified because one, the holding periods for different assets classes were different, which has now come down to 2. The rates were different, which has now the long-term rate is 1. And this indexation used to cause a lot of calculation complexity, which has gone. So in terms of simplification, it's a positive step, but for some people, it will also be painful.
Right. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Pandya, for joining us and clarifying that for us. We also spoke earlier in the day to Pranav Setha of EY India, who explains how this will impact the common citizen.
So the way I look at it is that based on the finance bill which has been introduced in Parliament yesterday, on a bare reading of it, what I can clearly gauge is that indexation is completely gone. So there is no concept of indexation once this bill becomes law, statute, and is passed by the Parliament. So the long-term capital gains tax will not now qualify for any indexation, but they have not touched another provision in the law, which essentially says that if I have acquired any capital asset before 1st April 2001, and I sell that asset today, then I am eligible to take either the actual original cost or the fair market value as on 1/4/2001 as a cost of acquisition while computing my capital gain. Effectively, therefore, if I had acquired an asset before 1st April 2001, any appreciation in the value of that asset up to 1st April 2001 is not taxable because that value is allowed to me as a cost of acquisition. If I had acquired an asset, maybe a property in 1980 at 100, the fair market value appreciated as on 1st April 2001, it was worth maybe 250. Then when I sell the asset today, I could either take my original cost of 100 or the fair market value as on 1st April 2001, 250. Obviously, I will take 250 as a deduction towards deemed cost. And my capital gain will be worked out accordingly. So if I sell the asset today at 1,000, 1,000 minus 250, 750 will be my capital gain, not 1,000 minus 100, my actual original cost. So 900 will not be my capital gain, but my capital gain will be 750. Because I am allowed to claim a deduction of 250, which is the fair market value as on 1st April 2001. Hitherto, that fair market value was further allowed to be indexed till today. That I don't think is possible based on a reading of the finance bill. I think probably what the minister might have meant is that the appreciation in value between 1980 to 2001 April is in any case being allowed as a deduction. Not strictly by way of any indexation, but because I am being allowed the fair market value as on 1/4/2001 as a deemed cost. Therefore, for all practical purposes, you are not getting taxed on the appreciation between 1980 and April 2001. And I think that's probably what he meant. It's hard to say for sure, but that's what I would guess he might have meant. Of course, if they want to, over and above this, give indexation, they could always do so. But that, I think, will require a change in the current provisions of the finance bill.
All right. Well, it is time for a very short break here. But when we return, we bring you an exclusive chat with Ramani Datti, the CFO of Team Lead. Stay with us. Welcome back. Now, Budget 2024 also had a lot in store for youngsters. The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman announced a policy to provide paid internships to students at India's top 500 companies. These internships will be given over the next 5 years and will benefit 1 crore youth. Now, the interns will get a monthly stipend of 5,000 rupees. The centre has also planned to offer them a one-time assistance of 6,000 rupees. The companies are expected to bear the interns' training cost under their CSR funds. The companies will also be required to bear a 10% of the internship cost that the Finance Minister has announced. Now, to discuss this initiative further, we're now joined by Ramani Datti, the CFO of Team Lead. Good evening, Ms. Datti. Thank you very much for joining us on NDTV Profit. Ms. Datti, to begin with, this is an innovative manner in which the Finance Minister has come out with a scheme to create more jobs. Do you think that this scheme will go a long way actually in dealing with the shortage of skilled manpower that we see in India?
Absolutely. So this is a great initiative towards skill enhancement, because in the past, government has tried multiple models in terms of short-term trainings, classroom-based trainings. And now it has come to a point wherein I think all stakeholders, be it companies, candidates, job seekers, everyone have realized that there is no alternative to skilling. There is no alternative as far as skill enhancement is concerned. The best option is to go with on-the-job training. So it can't be 100% classroom-based training. There has to be on-the-job skilling, which can improve the employability of the candidates over time. And this is a very welcoming move, because one of the biggest challenges that we face when we are doing apprenticeship business or internship work integrated learning programs, the biggest pushback is from corporates, because corporates are willing to pay a premium for a fully skilled job seeker, but they are not willing to pay for training them or upskilling them. And even the candidates are also, especially at the entry-level jobs, they don't have any financing to go for upskilling for themselves. So this can be a perfect fit wherein the government can provide 90% subsidy on the stipend, and the corporates can use their CSR funding to sponsor for the 10% and also to administer the training curriculum for these interns. So in the long run, this can definitely fill the gap of what we are seeing as skill shortage right now, and it can enable formalized employment in the long run.
Absolutely. We're, of course, talking about big corporates, but apart from that, there is also a skill shortage, say, for instance, in the infrastructure sector, the real estate sector. We've had companies come out and say that they don't even have, people who can actually fill requirements for, say, electricians, etc. So in that sense also, do you think that this is a perfect sort of a solution to problems, not just that we face in bigger cities, but also, perhaps tier 2 cities in the rural areas as well?
Yeah, occasional skill enhancement is also a very important aspect, as you have rightly mentioned. But to start with, this idea of starting with top 500 companies is good, because there is a high chance of misusing the whole concept of internship, wherein it shouldn't be taken as an alternative to cheap labor, right? So this is actually quite welcoming, wherein they are starting with the top 500 companies who have a CSR pool that can be spent on skilling the candidates instead of ghost employees or alternative cheap labor. And based on the results and outcomes, maybe it can be extended to other categories as well over time.
Obviously, this will also bring down the cost of talent acquisition by a large extent, because some of it goes from CSR. Of course, the government is pitching in as well.
Yes. So talent acquisition costs will also come down, and actually the productivity can go up. Because right now what's happening is companies are doing a betting on freshers, and based on the experience that we handle with our fresher hiring, only 30% of the candidates are getting retained by the companies after 6 months. So it can be either because of the productivity issue or the attrition issue. Candidates are moving within 6 months and less than 1 year. Majority of them are leaving within less than 1 year. So this can fix the problem of the talent acquisition, long-term retention of the candidates, and also higher productivity.
And of course, there is the fact that they will then also become more employable in the future.
Absolutely. So the candidates can be absorbed. A percentage of these candidates can be absorbed by the same employer, or they can even go out for other jobs outside, either as a full-time employee, contract employee, or any other model.
So all in all, you think this is a great scheme, right? Thank you very much, Ms. Dati, for joining us and sharing your views. Let's, in fact, quickly listen. Thank you. Let's, in fact, quickly listen into what the Finance Minister had said. She, of course, has called this a transformative internship scheme. The program aims to help 1 crore youth, offering financial support as well.
Internship in top companies. As the 5th scheme under Prime Minister's package, our government will launch a comprehensive scheme for providing internship opportunities in 500 top companies to 1 crore youth in 5 years. They will gain exposure for 12 months to real-life business environment, varied professions, and employment opportunities. An internship allowance of 5,000 per month, 5,000 rupees per month, along with a one-time assistance of 6,000 rupees will be provided. Companies will be expected to bear the training cost and 10% of their internship cost from their CSR funds.
Well, we also spoke to Kiran Majumdar-Shaw, the executive chairperson of Biocon and Biocon Biologics. She spoke to us about how she sees this internship decision.
It is a win-win to basically marry government subsidies in internships with CSR. So I think that's the right approach. So let's see how it all pans out. But right now we know that there are a large number of manufacturing opportunities that India is trying to address. And for that, you really need a large skill force. And if you can actually use, this internship program to skill your labor force or your manufacturing workforce, then I think you have a good chance of getting a lot of that manufacturing coming our way.
And on that note, it's a goodbye from us on The Big Story. We'll be back with more, so stay with us on NDTV Profit.